Alright, family, pull up a chair, lock the door behind you, and put your phone on absolute silent, because what I am about to walk you through is one of the wildest, dirtiest, most brazenly exposed pieces of celebrity manipulation the internet has ever watched unfold in real time. And baby, the receipts are already sitting on the table. Blueface just pulled off the most calculated, most transparent, most humiliating public stunt of his entire messy career. And this time, Blueface did not just get caught. Blueface got dragged screaming through his own timeline by the very audience he thought he was outsmarting. And by the time this video ends, you are going to understand exactly why Blueface is finished, why Chrisean Rock finally slammed the door shut in his face for good, and why Coach Calvin just became the most talked about man in hip-hop this week. Look here, if you thought last week's chaos was loud, buckle in, because Blueface is running plays on a full-time schedule, and this one right here is the play that finally broke the fourth wall clean in half. Let me set the table before we even take a bite. For anybody who has been following the Blueface, Chrisean Rock, India, and Coach Calvin storyline over on Kick, you already know the temperature has been climbing week after week. But something happened during that lunch broadcast, that quiet little lunch stream where Blueface and India were pretending everything was normal, that changed the entire game in less than 5 seconds. Right around the moment Blueface pulled up Apple Pay and said he would handle the bill, Blueface slipped in a line so specific, so out of place, so deliberately staged, that anybody watching with even half a functioning brain caught it immediately. Blueface said, and I am going to quote him exactly, "It is a 3-hour time difference. Baby, a 3-hour time difference." Now why in the entire world would a grown man reaching for a lunch bill inside a Los Angeles restaurant suddenly announce, completely unprompted, that there is a 3-hour time difference between coasts? Why would Blueface, mid-Apple Pay, casually drop what sounds exactly like a flight booking calculation into a conversation that had absolutely nothing to do with travel? Because Blueface wanted the internet to hear it. Blueface wanted that clip to leave that room and travel across every gossip page in the country before dinner. Blueface wanted people to believe, without him ever committing to the lie on the record, that Chrisean Rock was on a plane, right that second, flying from the East Coast to the West Coast, flying back into his arms, flying back into the arms of a man who has publicly humiliated her more times than we can count. And it worked. For about 12 full hours, Blueface's little script actually worked. The big blogs picked it up and ran with it. The comment sections lit up with the same recycled narrative on repeat. Chrisean is on her way. Chrisean is flying out. Chrisean is folding again. Chrisean cannot stay away. And Blueface sat back with his feet up and watched the algorithm do exactly what he had programmed it to do. But here is where Blueface underestimated the internet. Here is where Blueface, for all his years of manipulating headlines, forgot the one iron rule that governs this new era of celebrity gossip. Social media does not lie. Social media has too many eyes, too many timestamps, too many receipts, and too many detectives willing to cross-reference an outfit against a date stamp, against a live stream, against a track workout in a completely different state. Blueface thought he was running a con on a captive audience. What Blueface did not realize, and what he still does not seem to fully grasp, was that Chrisean Rock had already spent her entire morning on a track in the middle of a family day workout with Coach Calvin, and Coach Calvin, God bless his heart, had already posted every single second of it to Instagram before Blueface even finished paying for his lunch. Let me tell you about Coach Calvin, because Coach Calvin absolutely deserves this moment in the sun. Coach Calvin is the man who, after everybody else in Chrisean Rock's chaotic orbit either gave up on her, cashed in on her downfall, or exited stage left when the drama got too heavy, decided that he was still going to show up for her. Coach Calvin is the man who put Chrisean on a track at sunrise and said, "Give me 2 laps at a slow pace. We got a lot of stuff to do today." Coach Calvin is the man who, while the entire internet was busy debating whether Chrisean was flying to Los Angeles to grovel at Blueface's feet, was quietly filming Chrisean running 3 miles in North Carolina, in the exact same outfit she was photographed in the day before, on August the 22nd, with a timestamp and a location tag and a family day caption that leaves absolutely zero room for interpretation. Salute to Coach Calvin. Big respect to Coach Calvin. All the flowers in the world to Coach Calvin. Because most men in his exact position would have said, "I do not want the smoke. I do not want the scrutiny. I do not want to be associated with a woman who has been dragged, humiliated, beaten while pregnant, and worse by a partner she keeps flying back to. Most men would have walked away. Coach Calvin stayed. Coach Calvin coached. And Coach Calvin, without even trying to be the hero, just handed the internet the single receipt that ended Blueface's entire manufactured narrative in one Instagram post. Now let me pull the camera back and explain exactly what I think happened here, because this is not just a story about a man getting caught in a lie. This is a story about a pattern. Blueface has a pattern. Blueface has a signature move. Blueface has an entire operating manual that he runs like clockwork every single time Chrisean Rock cuts off contact with him. And if you have been watching this saga for as long as I have, you have already seen this exact play run at least 4 separate times in the last calendar year. Watch what happens, because it is choreographed to the second. Chrisean gets fed up. Chrisean blocks Blueface. Chrisean goes dark on social media. Chrisean deletes her lives, wipes her stories, and closes her comments. And within 72 hours, without fail, Blueface finds a camera, finds a co-star, and manufactures a scene designed for one purpose and one purpose only, to rage bait Chrisean into breaking her silence. That is the play. That is the whole play, top to bottom. And this 3-hour time difference clip was Blueface running that play in broad daylight, in a public restaurant, at lunch, with India as his unwitting co-star in a production Chrisean did not even know was being filmed for her. Remember the store scene. Remember it clearly. Remember when Chrisean was in the store with Blueface right before he dropped her off at the airport the other night, and Chrisean told Blueface, straight to his face, calm as an ice cube, that she was about to lock in, that she was going to block him, that she was cutting off all access. And what did Blueface say? Blueface, smug as ever, cocky as always, said, I will just call you from a block number. Baby, that was not a joke. That was a mission statement. That was Blueface publicly telling Chrisean, and telling all of us watching, that no matter what she does, no matter how many walls she puts up, no matter how many numbers she blocks, he is going to find a way through. Well, this week, for once, Blueface could not get through. Chrisean actually held the line. Chrisean actually blocked him and stayed blocked. Chrisean actually went dark and stayed dark. So Blueface did what Blueface always does when direct manipulation fails. Blueface escalated to indirect manipulation. And when a narcissist cannot reach the person they are trying to control directly, they perform for that person publicly instead. They stage scenes. They drop pointed lines about 3-hour time differences into lunch conversations that have nothing to do with travel. That is not spontaneity, family. That is not a slip of the tongue. That is choreography. That is the choreography of a man who has run completely out of direct access and is now trying to hijack the algorithm itself to carry his messaging for him. And do not, I repeat, do not, let anybody in the comments try to gaslight you into thinking that Blueface just happened to mention a time zone. Blueface does not accidentally do anything on camera. Blueface built his entire second career on the premise that every waking moment could be monetized, streamed, and weaponized. This is a man who has made nearly $100,000 on Kick in a matter of weeks, and the vast majority of that money has been generated during segments where he and Chrisean Rock are on screen together. Blueface knows the math. Blueface knows that the Chrisean audience is his most valuable audience by a country mile. Blueface knows that when Chrisean disappears, his numbers dip. And Blueface, being the calculating operator that he is underneath all that manufactured chaos, is not going to let his cash cow walk out the door quietly. So Blueface pulled India in. And listen, I have to give India a little bit of grace here, because unlike some of the other women who have gotten caught inside Blueface's gravitational orbit, India actually has the awareness and the hustle to monetize her own moment. India walked into that lunch, sat down across from a man everybody in America knows is using her as a chess piece, and instead of letting herself be treated like a prop, India turned on her TikTok live and started stacking her own bag in real time. That is not nothing. That is somebody who watched the previous women in Blueface storylines get chewed up and spit out, and said to herself, if I am going to be in this circus, I am going to at least walk out of the tent with my own coins in my pocket. So I will absolutely give India her flowers for that. India played the hand she was dealt. But make no mistake, India is not the endgame for Blueface. India is a chess piece. India is bait. India is the co-star in a scene that was written for Chrisean's eyes, and Chrisean's eyes only. And Chrisean saw it. Of course Chrisean saw it. Chrisean has spent years being both the leading star and the recurring victim of Blueface storylines, and by now, Chrisean can read Blueface scripts better than the writers themselves. Chrisean knows every camera angle he prefers, every tone shift he uses, every strategic pause he times. When Chrisean saw that lunch clip circulating on the timeline, Chrisean knew exactly what Blueface was doing. Chrisean knew the 3-hour time difference line was aimed at her. Chrisean knew the internet was going to spin it into a Chrisean is coming back narrative. And instead of doing what Chrisean has done 100 times before, instead of picking up the phone in a rage, instead of booking the flight in a fit, instead of folding into the storyline Blueface was writing for her from an LA restaurant, Chrisean did something different this time. Chrisean trolled him back. Chrisean posted a picture from what looks like a hotel lobby, cryptic, silent, no caption drama, no explanation, just a location tease designed to spin the internet in the completely opposite direction. Because Chrisean knew that the second she posted that photo, the same blogs that were saying she was flying to Los Angeles would immediately pivot and start asking, wait, where is Chrisean really? And that pivot, that moment of collective internet confusion, is the exact moment Coach Calvin's video dropped and rearranged the entire storyline. Family, the timing of that Coach Calvin video is not an accident either. Coach Calvin posted a family day workout with Chrisean Rock in North Carolina on August the 22nd, with Chrisean wearing the exact same outfit she was photographed in the day before. That is not a coincidence. That is a checkmate. Coach Calvin, whether he meant to be the hero or not, just delivered the single receipt that vaporized Blueface's entire narrative in one clean shot. Because now every single person who was on the fence, every single blog that ran with the flying to LA story, every single fan who thought Chrisean was folding, has to confront the undeniable fact that Chrisean was never on a plane. Chrisean was on a track. Chrisean was fasting. Chrisean was running laps with a coach who actually cares whether she makes it to next week alive and well. Chrisean was, for maybe the first time in a very long time, choosing herself over the storyline. Now I want to be honest with you, family, because being honest is what I do. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Chrisean and Blueface are done for good. I have been watching this cycle too long to make that kind of promise. Chrisean might be back on a kickstream with Blueface by next weekend. That is the truth. That is the pattern. But right now, in this specific moment, Chrisean is not folding. And that matters. Because every single time Chrisean holds the line, even for just a few days, Chrisean gets stronger. Every single time Chrisean chooses the track over the flight, Chrisean rewrites her own story a tiny bit. And every single time somebody like Coach Calvin shows up to invest in her without judgment, without an agenda, without a hidden angle, Chrisean gets one step closer to the version of herself the internet has been begging her to become for years. Meanwhile, let us not forget what Blueface did the other night on Kick, because this is critical context. Chrisean was going full tilt on that live stream. Chrisean was melting down in real time. Chrisean was sending subs. Chrisean was reacting to every single twitch of Blueface's phone screen. And Blueface, sitting there with a woman named Nana on his couch, was on the phone with somebody. And Nana walked in on that entire scene and threw a full glass of water directly on Blueface's chest and said, "If you want to be with her, go be with her." Family, that moment right there was the beginning of the end of this current chapter. Because after that water hit Blueface's shirt, Chrisean disappeared. Chrisean deleted her lives. Chrisean wiped her stories. Chrisean went completely dark. And Blueface, for the first time in a long while, could not reach her through any channel. That is when Blueface started planning. That is when Blueface started drawing up new plays. That is when the 3-hour time difference line got written into Blueface's script. Because Blueface knew, deep down, that if he could not get to Chrisean directly, he was going to have to get to Chrisean through the timeline instead. Look at the choreography of it all. Look at how deliberate every single piece is when you line it up in sequence. Blueface schedules a kickstream. Blueface invites India to lunch. Blueface makes sure the phone camera is angled just right. Blueface reaches for the check at the exact moment the audience is paying attention. Blueface drops the line. Blueface waits. And the internet, obedient as ever, picks up the clip and runs with it exactly as scripted. This is not a man who is heartbroken. This is a man who has been running the same con for years, and the con is finally losing its magic. Because for the first time in a long time, the audience is starting to notice the strings. For the first time, the audience is watching the puppeteer's hands instead of just the puppets. For the first time, Blueface manipulation is becoming more visible than his charisma, and that is a losing equation for any performer. And let me diagnose this for you, because I want to be surgically clear about what we are looking at. Blueface is behaving like the textbook narcissist. Every single behavior Blueface is displaying, the public smear campaign, the triangulation with a new partner, the manufactured jealousy plot, the plausible deniability communication, the punishment for silence, the recruitment of flying monkeys to carry his narrative, is pulled straight out of the manipulation playbook. This is not chaos. This is not spontaneity. This is not a man who loves too hard. This is a man who has learned that public humiliation functions as a leash, and Blueface uses that leash every single time his partner tries to walk away. India is not his new love. Nana is not his new love. The lunch spots and the fake bill paying and the time zone confessions are not evidence of a man moving on. They are evidence of a hunt in progress. And that is exactly why this moment matters so much. Because if you have ever been in a relationship where somebody tried to control you through public performance, if you have ever had a partner who weaponized your friends, your feed, and your audience against you, if you have ever felt like you could not leave because the timeline itself was rigged against your exit, then you understand exactly what Chrisean Rock is walking through right now. And this whole thing stops being celebrity gossip and starts being a mirror. This is not just tea. This is a case study. This is what modern manipulation looks like when it gets handed a broadcasting license and a monetized platform. And Coach Calvin, I want to come back to Coach Calvin one more time, because I do not think people fully appreciate what Coach Calvin actually did this week. Coach Calvin is not a household name. Coach Calvin is not chasing clout. Coach Calvin does not need Chrisean Rock's platform to eat. Coach Calvin runs a real training operation, works with real athletes, and posts fitness content that has nothing to do with celebrity drama. Coach Calvin could have very easily said, "This Chrisean situation is way too messy for my brand," and quietly stepped back into his own lane. Instead, Coach Calvin fasted with Chrisean. Coach Calvin brought Chrisean to the track. Coach Calvin filmed Chrisean running laps and called her his baby boy in that affectionate mentor way that grown men only use with somebody they truly care about. Coach Calvin made it a family day. And in doing all of that, Coach Calvin gave Chrisean something she has almost never had in her entire adult life on the internet. A stable adult male presence who is not trying to sleep with her, sell her, or spin her. That is rare. That is precious. And that is exactly why Blueface's little 3-hour time difference stunt collapsed so spectacularly. Because while Blueface was playing chess with the algorithm from a lunch table, Coach Calvin was doing the actual real work of showing up. Now the picture Chrisean posted, the hotel lobby shot, I want to break that one down too. Chrisean posting a photo from a hotel lobby is not accidental. Chrisean knows exactly what the internet is going to do with a hotel lobby image. The internet is going to assume travel, a rendezvous, a location she is not at. That is the entire point. Chrisean was trolling Blueface right back at his own game. Chrisean was saying, without saying a word, "You want to plant a fake narrative about my location? Cool, watch me plant one right back at you." And Chrisean did it with a single photo, no caption, no explanation, no defensiveness. That is the move of a woman who has finally learned the game. That is not the Chrisean of 2 years ago, the one who would have been on the phone screaming at Blueface within an hour. That is a Chrisean who has finally realized that silence, paired with strategic ambiguity, is the loudest weapon anybody can wield on the modern timeline. But then Coach Calvin's video dropped, and suddenly the hotel lobby became completely irrelevant, because the track video was a location confirmation, an outfit confirmation, and a date confirmation all packaged into one Instagram post. And that is when the entire house of cards came tumbling down. Because now anybody with functioning eyes can look at the two pieces of footage side by side and see with their own vision that Chrisean was never anywhere near a plane, that Blueface was never expecting her, and that the entire 3-hour time difference performance was a solo act with no scene partner. Blueface was talking to nobody. Blueface was flying nobody out. Blueface was auditioning for an audience that had already read the script and figured out the ending before he even reached for the Apple Pay. And baby, this is the part one really need you to sit with, because Blueface has done this so many times over the years that we have all collectively normalized the cycle. Chrisean leaves. Blueface schemes. Chrisean comes back. Blueface humiliates her again. Rinse and repeat forever. But this time, something feels genuinely different. This time, Chrisean did not come running back within 24 hours. This time, Coach Calvin showed up to fill the space Blueface used to monopolize. This time, the internet caught the manipulation in real time and refused to run with it. And this time, India, of all people, decided to protect her own bag instead of playing the sacrificial girlfriend role. Every single variable that used to work in Blueface's favor is quietly turning against him, and I do not think Blueface even sees it happening yet. Let me talk about Nana for a second, because Nana deserves her flowers too. When Nana threw that glass of water on Blueface, that was not a jealous outburst. That was a boundary. That was a woman with self-respect drawing a line in front of a live camera. Nana walked in on a man she is presumably involved with, on the phone with a woman he refuses to let go of, and Nana said enough. Nana said, "You are not going to have me sitting here in the background while you emotionally cheat on the timeline." And then Nana walked away. That is another woman in Blueface orbit who is starting to see the pattern and refusing to be the next sequel. India might be next in that same lineup. Because whatever India is getting out of this arrangement with Blueface right now, this is not going to end well for India either if she stays past her expiration date in the storyline. Now some of you watching are going to say, "But B, come on, is it really this deep? Is Blueface really planning every single second of this?" And to you I say yes, it really is this deep, because we have watched Blueface do this too many times for it to be a series of coincidences. We have watched Blueface time controversies to his stream schedules, drop bombshells before boxing matches, and post inflammatory content the exact minute his subs need a bump. Blueface is not a chaotic mess. Blueface is a strategist wearing a chaotic mess costume, and the costume has been slipping lately. Once you see the strategist underneath, you cannot unsee it. Which brings us right back to the 3-hour time difference. Which brings us right back to that one throwaway line, dropped so casually at a lunch table, that ended up unraveling in Blueface's own hands. Because Blueface forgot, or maybe Blueface simply underestimated, that in this current era, everything gets cross-referenced. The internet does not just take a clip at face value anymore. The internet checks the outfit, the date stamp, the geolocation, the coach's Instagram, and builds a timeline. And once the timeline is built, no amount of misdirection can rewrite what everybody has already seen with their own eyes. Blueface got caught, not because somebody exposed him from the outside, but because Blueface exposed himself the moment he opened his mouth about a time zone that had absolutely nothing to do with his lunch check. And here is where it gets even more embarrassing for Blueface, because let us look at the money. Blueface has been publicly bragging about his kick earnings all month. Blueface has been rolling in nearly $100,000 in a short window. But how much of that money is really Blueface, and how much of it is Chrisean's? Every single one of those numbers spikes when Chrisean is on screen. Every single one of those numbers dips the moment she is not. Blueface knows this math. Blueface has been living off Chrisean's audience for the entire back half of his career. So when Chrisean disappears, Blueface is not just losing a girlfriend. Blueface is losing an entire revenue stream. And that is why Blueface panics. That is why Blueface schemes. That is why Blueface calls a girl to lunch and drops a scripted line about a 3-hour time difference into a check-paying moment. Because for Blueface, this was never about love. This was always about the money. And baby, the money is walking out the door with Coach Calvin's stopwatch in her hand. I want to talk about the fans for a second, because y'all deserve some credit too. The way this fandom saw through the stunt within hours, the way the comments filled up with people saying, "Wait, this does not add up, wait," whereas Chrisean actually, the way the collective intelligence of this audience simply refused to be manipulated, that is progress. Because 2 years ago, this exact same fandom would have taken that clip and run with it, and Chrisean would have been the villain for coming back. But not this time. This time, the audience protected her. This time, the audience said no. We're going to wait for the receipts. And when Coach Calvin's video finally dropped, the audience did what this audience does best. They turned it into a full-blown movement. And that is precisely why Blueface is losing right now. Not because Blueface made a single mistake, but because the audience finally grew out of Blueface tricks. The audience finally learned how to read the room. The audience finally started asking the right questions in real time. And once an audience stops laughing at your jokes and starts noticing your patterns, your entire brand is officially on borrowed time. Blueface is on borrowed time. And I genuinely do not think Blueface has the self-awareness to see it before it collapses on him. So what happens next? Let me give you my most honest read. I think Blueface is going to escalate. I think Blueface is going to try something even louder in the next week or two, because the 3-hour time difference play failed publicly, and narcissists never respond to failure with humility. Narcissists respond with volume. So expect another stunt. Expect another manufactured moment. Expect another woman brought into the storyline as a prop. And when it happens, come right back to this video, because I promise you, you will see the exact same choreography I just walked you through. And I think Chrisean, if Chrisean is smart, and I believe Chrisean is smarter than the internet gives her credit for, is going to keep leaning into Coach Calvin. Chrisean is going to keep showing up on that track. Chrisean is going to keep fasting. Chrisean is going to keep filming family days with people who actually love her. Because every single one of those moments is one more brick in a wall that Blueface can no longer climb over. And once that wall gets high enough, Blueface will finally have to sit with the reality that his most valuable asset walked away from him, not because somebody took her, but because she finally chose herself. I also want to acknowledge something a lot of people are not saying out loud. Chrisean has a long road ahead of her. Chrisean has trauma that did not start with Blueface and will not end with him. Chrisean has patterns of her own to unlearn. Chrisean has healing to do that no track workout and no fasting streak can substitute for on its own. But every journey starts with a first step, and choosing Coach Calvin's track over Blueface plane ticket is a real first step. It is a small step. It is not the whole journey, but it is a step in the right direction, and any step in the right direction, in Chrisean's world, deserves to be acknowledged and protected. Meanwhile, let me say this to Blueface directly, because I know Blueface lurks in these comments. Blueface, the 3-hour time difference stunt was your worst script yet. Blueface, the internet is not the same audience you started your career with. Blueface, the algorithm is not going to protect you from your own patterns forever. Blueface, the money is going to dry up the moment Chrisean stops feeding your numbers, and Chrisean is one healed woman away from doing exactly that. So maybe, just maybe, this is the week you take a long breath. Maybe this is the week you sit with the fact that you cannot manipulate your way back into a woman's life through a lunch clip. Maybe this is the week you finally become the man Chrisean thought she was signing up for. Or maybe you do not, and this cycle keeps repeating until the audience finally turns the channel off completely. Either way, we are watching. Either way, we are documenting. Either way, we are keeping the receipts. And to Coach Calvin, in case this video ever finds its way to you, salute again. Big respect again. What Coach Calvin did this week, whether he realized it or not, was more important than a workout. Coach Calvin gave a woman a safe space in a week where safe spaces were being weaponized against her. Coach Calvin showed up when it was not convenient. Coach Calvin coached when coaching was not popular. And Coach Calvin documented all of it in a way that quietly saved an entire narrative from being hijacked. So thank you for that, Coach Calvin. The internet may not always say it clearly, but the internet noticed. Let us also talk about the bigger picture for a minute. What Blueface is running here is not unique to Blueface. What Blueface is running is a full-blown blueprint that a certain type of man has been running on women for generations. Only now, with platforms like Kik and TikTok and Instagram, the blueprint is being executed with a full production budget behind it. Blueface is not just manipulating Chrisean. Blueface is monetizing the manipulation. Blueface is turning abuse cycles into content pillars. Blueface is teaching a whole generation of young men who watch him that this is a viable career strategy. And that is the part that keeps me up at night. Because Chrisean will heal, eventually, if she gets the right support system around her. But the audience is still watching. And the audience is still learning. And if we do not name the manipulation out loud, the manipulation gets to keep spreading in silence. That is why I keep coming back to Coach Calvin. Because Coach Calvin, without knowing it, offered a counter blueprint this week. Coach Calvin offered an alternative to the Blueface script. Coach Calvin said, you can love somebody by feeding them, by training them, by showing up for their fasting streak, by celebrating them on a family day, by filming them running laps and calling them your baby boy in a way that has absolutely nothing to do with sex or spectacle. That is a different kind of love. That is a healthier kind of love. And every young man watching Blueface run his manipulation blueprint needs to also see Coach Calvin running his counter blueprint, because those two videos landed on the internet within hours of each other, and the contrast is the entire point. Now let me predict something for you. Blueface is going to try to co-opt the Coach Calvin narrative. Watch. Within a week, Blueface is going to post something that positions him as the real supportive figure in Chrisean's life. Blueface is going to reference a fitness routine, or a fasting streak, or a mentorship moment, and Blueface is going to try to steal Coach Calvin's frame. That is what narcissists do when a rival gets more positive attention than they do. They try to absorb the rival's identity and rebrand it as their own. So when you see Blueface post that content, do not fall for it. Remember exactly what he did on August the 22nd. Remember the 3-hour time difference. Remember the lunch table performance. And remember that Coach Calvin was already on the track before Blueface even reached for the check. And here is one more thing to watch. Watch what Blueface does with India next. If Blueface has learned anything from watching Nana walk away, Blueface is going to try to lock India down publicly to keep the storyline going for maximum monetization. If Blueface is not smart, and history strongly suggests he is not, Blueface is going to burn India the same way he burned every woman before her. And India is going to walk away with a bag and a lesson. And Blueface is going to be right back where he started, staring at a phone waiting for Chrisean to answer. Either way, India is the variable to watch. And Chrisean, if you ever end up watching this video, and I know Chrisean watches everything about her, hear this from me directly. Chrisean, you have earned the right to choose yourself. Chrisean, you have earned the right to fast on a track with Coach Calvin and ignore every phone in your bag. Chrisean, you have earned the right to post a hotel lobby photo and let the internet spin its wheels while you handle your business in North Carolina. Chrisean, you have earned the right to say no this week. And Chrisean, you have earned the right to say no next week too, and the week after that, until Blueface either becomes a completely different man or fades out of your storyline entirely. Family, let me tie it all together with a clean bow. Blueface tried to manipulate the internet with a lunch clip. The internet, at first, took the bait. But then Chrisean posted a hotel lobby photo, and Coach Calvin posted a track workout, and the receipts, in that exact order, dismantled Blueface's entire narrative in under 6 hours. Chrisean stayed on the East Coast. Chrisean stayed with Coach Calvin. Chrisean stayed away from the airport. And Blueface, sitting at that lunch table with India and an Apple Pay screen, ended up looking like a man auditioning for an audience of one that never showed up. That is the whole story. That is the whole receipt. That is the whole game. Before I close this out, roll back to my last drop, the video I posted right before this one, because everything in this current storyline connects back to what I broke down in that previous episode. India's actual history with Chrisean, the layers between them. The reason India walked into that lunch knowing exactly what she was walking into. All of that is in the last video. And if you missed it, this current story will not hit you the same way it should. And meet me in the comments right now. Do you believe Blueface planned the 3-hour time difference line on purpose? Or do you think I am reading too much into it? Do you think Chrisean is going to hold the line this time? Or do you think Chrisean is going to be back on a kick stream with Blueface by next weekend? Do you think Coach Calvin knew what his video was going to do when he posted it? Or was it a happy accident? And what do you think happens to India when Blueface is done using her as a chess piece? I want to hear every take. The good takes, the wild takes, the disagreements, the theories, all of it. Because this story is not over. Not by a long shot. And every single one of you is part of how this narrative gets written next. I am going to keep watching. I am going to keep documenting. I am going to keep pulling the receipts on Blueface every single time he tries to run his little plays. Because as long as Blueface keeps running plays, somebody has to keep calling out the choreography. And as long as Chrisean keeps taking steps in the right direction, somebody has to keep cheering her on. So stay locked in with me, because the next chapter of this Blueface, Chrisean, India, Nana, Coach Calvin story is already loading, and when it drops, we are going to be the first ones